want. That's what they want. All right, let me explain why this is happening as well, because when I produce this whole piece that we're going to air probably Friday, maybe next Sunday here, we've got one produced report coming up that Aaron Dykes did this week. There's another report I did yesterday that breaks a lot of it down up at Infowars.com with all the links to all the proof of what we're saying. But the United Nations, do you know its history? The British Empire was having trouble getting kicked out of countries in 1918 or so. Their empire was starting to collapse. And so on record, what they did was they worked with the Council on Foreign Relations that they'd established here in the U.S. I mean, they all write books about this. This is not a secret. Carol Quigley wrote Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's mentor at Georgetown. We sell the 1,400-page book at Infowars.com if you care to see it, or InfoWarsShop.com. How they established this global government, but they wanted nations to think they were part of it. So the League of Nations failed because the U.S. wouldn't join it. So the globalists said, well, we'll just fund a dictator like Hitler. Lord Milner did. He said, we'll find some dictator. He said that in the 1920s. Those documents are public. We'll have him wreck Europe. They didn't run Hitler. They funded him. Told him to go ahead and invade, had a treaty with England that they were going to back him up. That's what the Deputy Führer, Rudolf Hess, flew over to Germany and parachuted out with that treaty to the royal, grounds, and they arrested him and threw him in the tower. That's why Hitler at first wouldn't bomb England. England actually had to bomb Germany first before they did that, because he thought he had a treaty. He was going to make the King of England, the supreme ruler over England. He was a big Nazi. But again, you're not taught this in school, folks. Side issue, though. The same bankers set up Stalin because they wanted to play the two off against each other. Well, actually, they set up Lenin before that. Just look this up. J.P. Morgan funded Lenin. The British government sent over $50 million as well. Just look up Lenin's Train of Gold. It was tens of thousands of folks from the United States were sent as the paramilitary siege brigades out of Brooklyn, New York, and other areas to overthrow the White Russians. Folks, that doesn't mean they had white skin. It meant they were pro-Tsar. And our government really helped organize the overthrow of the Tsar and the installation of the Red Terror. This is all mainline history. But I digress again. Bring us up to 1945, end of World War II, Presidio military base in San Francisco. It's right underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. I've been there. You can go there. It's all Gorbachev UN foundations, now a command base of evil against America. And the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all pledged to put hundreds of millions of dollars of their money and then billions of U.S. taxpayer money into the UN so that they could have traitor politicians over time. And they all stated this. The CFR writes constant magazine articles. I mean, this is not hidden. They just think you're stupid. And so would have the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL and Nightline say you were crazy the last 50 years if you warned of the plan. Now they go on CNN, CNBC and announce, we've been captured by foreign banks. World government is here. You're going to pay your taxes to them. There'll never be a recovery. The bankers own you. Do you want me to play those clips again? I actually have them, but side issue. If you won't look it up, don't care about your own preservation, fine. And you feel powerless, you're just going to ignore me and say it isn't true. This isn't the show for you, okay? We're not rolling over here. We understand we can defeat this because it's so out in the open, it's so outrageous, it's so big, it's so wicked that if we just get the word out, doesn't take a majority to prevail against these tyrants, but a tireless, focused, informed, angry, motivated minority. We're fighting a minority of criminals that set this up. We, the people, are going to defeat them. Now, continuing here. Please look this up. The republic couldn't fall from without. It can only fall from within. So the globalists have taken over the U.S. They have used us as an engine to set up their global corporate government while getting us into debt to them, while letting us take the blame for what they've done, so that other globalist arms can pose as the good guys and get other countries to join them in coalitions. Meanwhile, the banksters that issue the currency and credit through fraud, through fractional reserve banking and now infinity lending via the fraudulent counterfeit instruments of derivatives, they've now leveraged that, and they sit above the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperative, the Anglo-American, Europe, England, U.S., Canada, New Zealand, Australia power axis. The three trilateral arms, all, and by the way, Rockefeller wrote books on this, David Rockefeller. The Trilateral Commission founding documents from 1974 are public. That's how I knew the whole plan. I didn't just magically imagine all this and now it's magically happening. It's all laid out, just like a program for a play. If you went to a play with 3 acts of William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and you have what's coming up next, honey, there's going to be the death of Caesar. And then the death of Caesar happens. They stab him to death in the Senate. And my wife doesn't tug on my arm and go, baby, you're psychic. How'd you? There's a program. There's a program. It's a program. It's a program. We're on a program. And the program doesn't lead to a nice place. Okay? Now, to make a long story short, the United States is taken over by the Federal Reserve in 1913. They only had a beachhead then. They expand their power, their control, leverage it. Emergency Powers Act 1933, bringing the government under emergency rule ever since then. 1945, start implementing the income tax that they passed in 1913 to pay the offshore Federal Reserve, as even the Grace Commission of Ronald Reagan found in 1981, not 1 red cent of your income tax goes to pay for anything. It goes to the bankers, who made it up all out of nothing, like Bernie Madoff and Ken Lay. Now, these banksters worldwide, they don't want anyone to be armed to be able to resist them. When their mercenaries or their militaries go in, I mean, they think you're so stupid, folks. The State Department publicly funded the Coney 2012 video, which we exposed first. Now it's admitted. They publicly funded a guy who hadn't been seen in 5.5 years, who controlled a few hundred square miles in northern Uganda. We predicted in the Obama deception 3.5 years ago they would invade and use him as the invasion pretext, because it's a playbook, it's a blueprint, it's a roadmap. I mean, it's a script. We know where they're going next. And they get on the news and say, oh, that's right, and Bush went over there, George W. The U.S. military is invading almost every country over there, calling it humanitarian assistance, and the UN goes in and slaughters the people and takes their property. I mean, villages, burns them to the ground, and if you resist, they kill you. They're just taking the property everywhere. It is a mass extermination going on, and you tell the average yuppie that, and they go, good, they're getting Coney. They're freezing assets of individuals and stopping mobility all over Africa now in the name of Coney. They're doing it in countries 2,000 miles away from Coney. Now, they don't want the Africans being able to get guns to defend themselves. Some are good, some are bad. The point is they're not globalist. They don't want you having a gun. They don't want police departments. In fact, I've got big giant files from the LA Times, you name it, back in the 60s, when they actually put this State Department plan out, 7277. But guys, print me 7277. It's online too. I've forgotten more than I'll ever remember. And it shows even our local police, after the takeover, they're going to be disarmed. And it's only going to be the UN, like in Hunger Games, that come floating over you in the big drone, and we're all down here with sticks and stones. I'm going to give you the master plan. It ties into the robot takeover. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. Central Time. That's 12 noon to 3 p.m. We're here live. Back Sundays live. We're live right now. It is 4:33 and 40 seconds. Central Standard Time, and I'm going to give the number out here in a moment. And then I'm going to play some video clips and go over some news, and then we're going to go to your phone calls on the subject of the United Nations Treaty on Small Arms. And then you read earlier versions of it, and it says, for complete and total disarmament of the American people, no guns anywhere. And you look at where Mayor Bloomberg, he openly says no citizen should be able to have a gun. The ATF announced last year, in fact, folks won't believe this, with outside of law now, they just do rulemaking, shotguns to be banned. Guys, type that in. Public comment on ATF shotgun ban announcement. And you'll be at the ATF website, but also in newspapers. And there was such a backlash, they backed off. But only because Congress said, we will override you. You can't do that on your own. And they said 60+% of shotguns made in the last decade would be banned because they could be modified to be non-sporting. Shotguns aren't for sport, folks, even though people use them for that. The Second Amendment's about defense against criminals on the street or of the Stalinistic type. Everyone knows that. They've had university professors that came out that the media pushed that said that it wasn't about that. That guy lost his tenure at the University of Chicago. Remember that? I had that guy on and grilled him and said, you're a liar. We're going to expose your research. Folks went and ferreted out his research. It was all made up. He lost his tenure. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. Hey, can you own a gun in Chicago? No. Can you own one in New York? No. Can you own one in London? No. Can you own one in Paris? No. Anywhere these people get in control. What's the UN have out front their building in New York? A .357 Magnum, Dirty Harry style, tied in a knot. A civilian gun. Thank God I live in Texas and not New York City, where you got to have 5 padlocks and the crime rate's on average 5 times what it is where I live in Austin, Texas. Because you don't home invade around here because more than half the houses have got guns, and you die if you do it. And again, everybody knows this. Everybody who's got a brain knows it. But you see the billboards put up the last 20 years by the Justice Department saying report illegal guns. And what's it? You've seen the billboards all over the country. And what does it show? A revolver. So that when the carpet cleaners at your house, who moved here from New York or whatever and thinks guns are illegal, or on all these movies and TV shows, they say the Second Amendment is basically non-existent. You know, all these cop shows, oh, you got a gun, you're going to jail, all based in New York. The carpet cleaner calls the cops on you. The guy freaked out, saw my gun case before I even had kids. In my house, I said, what's going on? He goes, oh, you got guns in here. I'm not going to. I said, that's a gun case, man. Those are shotguns and stuff. And he said, I can't do it, and starts leaving. And I had a bad feeling and called the carpet cleaner place about an hour later. And they said, we stopped him. We understand you're allowed to have guns. But they still acted weird, like I was bad. And I said, well, I'll never use you again, you lunatics. This is how they operate. This is the culture, the idea they've created. That's why people open carrying everywhere is freaking out the system, because they want to have the idea that guns are illegal. I read articles all the time where people are trying to sell their house, and the realtors call the cops when they see a gun case. Or reloading. Oh, that must be explosives. This is such a... You've got one half the country totally domesticated, cowardly, dumbed down. And then you've got those of us that can still skin a buck, run a trot line, who are seen as the enemy. And we're alien to these people. They think we're bad, ladies and gentlemen. They think we're bad. They think if a family's getting along and daddy's the head of the household, that we're sick. They say this in their own textbooks. I've seen University of Texas textbooks where I live in Austin, Texas. I've shown them on air where they call the family a bygone era and a disease. Look it up. It's in a whole bunch of textbooks. You're like, well, that sounds crazy. Yeah, but they're in control. And by the way, I'm sick of calling these people liberals. They're not liberals. They're authoritarians posing as nanny state people that want to take care of you. What they want is to have you as their slaves. Now, let me stop right there. Before I get to these clips and Aaron Dyke's report in the next segment and your calls, freedom from war. The United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World, U.S. Department of State. In fact, around here somewhere in our files, we have the original little blue State Department booklets. This is 1961. Just type in State Department Memorandum 7277. And they've got the diagrams. The full scans are online. This is from .edu. This is from, what is that, from Princeton? Go read this. And it says the police will be armed. Hey, cops, you think you're being given those tasers because it gives you something lower powered on the threat continuum? Read this.